Friday. Today we're going to be talking about some breeding tips and secrets, and also we're going to be doing another giveaway. Haven't decided on a number yet, but we're going to do the same thing as last week, where not last week but the other week, I'm going to pick a number 1 through 150. I'm going to write it down for you guys, and towards the end of this live stream, whoever gets the closest number to the number I picked will be the winner. If you go over and somebody else is the same distance away from the number, we're going to go with the person who didn't go over. So closest number to what I am going to write down right now, and then we'll pick later in the live stream. So let's turn around and look at some fish. Oh, sorry guys, got you sideways there. I see some numbers coming in already. So here we're looking at the Tanganyikan show tank. Look how nice that male frontosa is, that big hump. It's looking really good. So we're going to talk about breeding fish today, guys. We're going to start... First, we're going to start about talking about the two main different types of breeding water, like water types. I don't know, I can't think of a better way to say it. So basically, you got your soft water fish and you have your hard water fish. So really, it kind of breaks down into like your Asian and South American fish, and then you got your African cichlids and your really kind of probably more towards the U.S. native type fish, where we're talking about hard water versus soft water. Really, it's going to depend on the types of fish you have. Obviously, a lot of our customers are really big into African cichlids, so we're going to start with the hard water, and we're going to start with just talking about what do we really need to breed fish. We need water. We need some type of filtration, whether that is a filter or plants or a lot of water changes. And we also need, certain fish need something to spawn on or spawn in. Or you have your fish that are mouth brooders that they don't need anything, just a bare bottom tank, and they will actually spawn and pick up their eggs and hold them in their mouth. So your mouth brooders. Here, we're gonna look at this tank here. Yeah, Bill, those are some things I'm gonna hit on, is temperature. So some things I want to talk about here. I took some very brief notes and just want to highlight some points. So we're talking about Adam. We're doing another giveaway. I have a number written down between 0 and 150. Whoever gets closest or guesses the number by the end of the stream, I'm going to go back and look. And whoever gets closest, I'm going to reach out with another $25 promo code for the website. So that's what you missed there with all the comments with numbers. Alright, so things that are important when it comes to breeding fish. So we kind of touched on the water. Depending on where your fish are from is going to depend on the water. So soft water, hard water. We could go really in depth there. This video, we're not going to go in depth on water, but it's important. It really depends on where your fish are coming from, whether you need a high pH or a low pH, or low TDS and high TDS. So, for example, here we're looking at the Lichnochromis acuticeps. There's just one fish in here. Obviously, it's not a breeding fish, but we know that this fish comes from, I believe, Lake Malawi. It's an African cichlid, and we know that it needs hard water to spawn. So we want to keep that fish in hard water. The next important thing is temperature. Uh, a lot of these fish require similar temperatures. Now, as far as tropical fish, we're looking anywhere from 74 to 84 degrees if we're trying to breed them. It really depends on the fish and the time of year that fish likes to spawn. Here we're looking at another Acudiceps and another tank. So temperature is pretty important, and temperature changes can be very important for certain fish when it comes to breeding. So to get some fish to breed, they actually like a temperature drop, because that kind of stimulates a big rainfall. So the water temperature is going to drop and the fish are going to want to spawn right after a nice rainfall, or in our case, a water change. So if you do a cool water change, maybe a 5-degree difference in temperature, the fish will, start to spawn, because they sense that a big rainstorm's coming. And usually with a rainstorm comes more natural live foods in nature, and in some cases even more spawning grounds, because the water level is going to raise, and that's actually going to give these fish access to areas they might not normally have access to. Like if we're talking in the Amazon, with during the rainy season, when the water level rises, those fish have access to a lot more food and spawning areas that naturally and other times of the year they might not have access to. So got water type, we got temperature, and now we have water changes, which is going to stimulate spawning, because it's kind of simulating a natural water exchange, or water like rainy season type. Also, so we're going to touch on filtration in your tank. Now, if you're spawning fish and you're looking to spawn to get big numbers, I highly recommend a sponge filter, whether it's a matin filter like these or the traditional sponge filter, which we use in our spawning areas. We use them to raise fry, and we use them in breeding the fish. I personally prefer the traditional sponge filter when it comes to spawning fish, and that is because it's going to limit the flow in the tank. Now the flow is going to be, if you have a traditional sponge, like say you have it right here where this plant is, you're going to get water flow, and it's going to be nice and gentle. You're not going to get any current like that. Now some fish might prefer that, but if you're talking African cichlids, if you're talking South American cichlids, when it comes to spawning, they don't like too much water flow. A little tip, when it comes to this water flow, I prefer less when it comes to spawning fish, and that is for when they're spawning, to actually ensure a higher chance of fertilization. I don't want a lot of water flow. I don't want the sperm from the male being dragged away. The less water flow, the better, and you're going to have a higher chance of fertilization. And that's just in my experience. It's not necessarily always going to be the case. And like I said, some fish, they prefer to have a higher flow like this. When we're talking like rainbow fish or shiners, or even some types of gobies, they're going to prefer to have some flow. So really it's going to depend on the fish that you have, and really just the environment that these fish are naturally going to come from. Also, in raising those fry, say you got a successful spawn, you're looking at sponge filters, because you don't want the fry to get sucked up into a traditional filter, say a hang on the back or a canister filter or even a sump. You don't want fry getting sucked in. So If you have a matin filter, the flow isn't strong enough. The fry aren't going to get sucked anywhere. They're not going to get pulled through here and shot back out into the tank. And also the flow is going to be a lot lower. So the fish aren't going to be fighting current, which is going to allow the fish to actually grow faster. And it's going to allow the fish to kind of just get the food easier. They're going to eat and they're going to grow faster because they're not chasing food around in the current and they're not constantly fighting a current. So it's allowing the fish to use that energy to grow rather than to just try to stay in position in the tank. You can see how a lot of these fish are kind of facing the current. They're all facing this way, facing the current. Now, if they're really a small fry, that's going to be tough for them to grow and also always kind of be fighting that current. I'm going to look at some of these questions. Guys, if you have any questions or comments about breeding, go ahead and ask or just state whatever you want to say, and I'm going to look and we can kind of talk about that. Fish fam, thanks for always letting everybody know to hit that like button. It's really, really helpful. So thank you for that. Daniel's asking, with the rainstorms, do predators go into seclusion to ride it out? Maybe in some cases. It really depends on the environment. Really, a lot of those predators, they're probably trying to also spawn with the influx of rainwater. So with that rainwater, it's going to wash more food into the lakes, rivers, ponds, whatever they're in. It's going to raise the water levels, which is going to give the fish more access to food, which really it really puts the fish in the mood to spawn because they're getting so much more access to food, and that makes the fish happy, and they're like, hey, times are good right now, we should spawn because there's going to be food for our fry. Adam's saying that the matin filters are really useful in growing out multis. Yeah, sponge filters in general, whether it's a matin filter or a traditional sponge filter, they're really, really useful in raising and spawning fish, especially when it comes to raising the fry. Heiko, turn off the wave makers. It depends on the fish. I've seen, if you're trying to breed for profit and you want to maximize your spawn and your fertilization, I would definitely say you don't want to have it in like a show tank. I would have it just in a fish, like a species only tank, and then that's going to give you a higher chance of fertilization. And the flow doesn't need to be so low that there's no real water movement, but you do kind of want to, you don't want it to be blasting unless that's what the fish like naturally. Kevin says there's no fry tank, so nature has to find a way. Yeah, and it will if you have, and a lot of times I see even new hobbyists, they're always like really excited when they got their African cichlids breeding for them. Daniel, I can go over and look at some of the opals. That's not a problem. So I'm just scrolling through looking at some of your guys' questions or comments, guys. So just bear with me while I walk over to these apistos. Terry's saying he'd love to add his male rainbow crew to the ones I have from Imperial. Yeah, an all male rainbow tank is really nice. I used to keep an all male rainbow tank for years and I really enjoyed it. Here we have the Apistogramma borellii that Daniel asked to see. So we breed these guys in-house. We just give them so the other type of water I didn't really hit on is soft water. Now when it comes to soft water, you have a couple of options. Softer water, and what do I mean by softer water? I mean water without a lot of minerals in it, so the TDS, or the total dissolved solids, are going to be lower. So we breed our apistos and our softwater fish in as close to 0 TDS as possible. Now what that's going to do is it's going to allow the fertilization of the eggs to be higher than if, say, you kept them in a higher TDS tank. The more TDS you have with some of these softwater fish, you're going to have a harder time with fertilization. And that is actually because the calcium and all the minerals in the water actually make it difficult for the sperm to enter the egg, because the egg's going to actually kind of calcify pretty quickly. I don't know if that's the correct term, is calcify, but it's going to harden pretty quickly, and it's not going to allow it to be fertilized as easy. So we try to get to as close to 0 as possible, but when it comes to raising them, we're actually going to add some TDS into that tank, so the fry actually have access to minerals to grow and their bones can form correctly. So Daniel's asking, no, these are not colored up yet. These are going to be 1 to 2 inch unsexed. I do see a difference in males and females, but it's not to a point where we feel comfortable guaranteeing it, because if we put them up as pairs, they're going to sell right away, and we're going to run into some issues. But these guys will color up given time and space. They sell so quickly that we have a hard time keeping them in stock at that nice, like, 2 inch colored up sexed size. And really quick, I see we got a pretty good number of people in here compared to before, so I'm just gonna say it again. We are doing a giveaway today. Choose a number between 0 and 150, and whoever gets closest to the number that I have written down at the end of this stream will win a $25 gift card to our website. We're going to choose whoever, if somebody says the same number, we're going to choose the person who chose the number first. And if we have two numbers that are the same distance apart from the number that I chose, we're going to go with the number that did not go over. Here we're looking at the Alto Tapiches. These guys don't sell as fast as the Borellii do, so they're a little bit bigger. These guys are really nice when they mature. The males are really cool. They have nice striping blue and red pattern in them. These guys are really cool. These are the 3-spot headstanders. If anybody has a community South American tank that has softer water, I highly recommend these guys. These guys are really cool. Not something you see very often. Definitely not something you're gonna see at like a local fish store. Unless you have like a really, really good local fish store that gets in like more rare type fish. But these guys are really cool. I like their little mouths on them. Bill's saying he hasn't done water changes in his tanks in 5 years. All he does is top-offs. And he's got live plants. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So guys, you guys any breeding questions? Now is the time to ask. I would like to help you guys out. I highly recommend anybody who hasn't done. I just saw somebody ask about these. These are the 3 spotted head sanders. Adam, we just put up a bunch of Spheni on the website. We'll go look at some. We have like a 1 to 2 inch up, 3 to 4 inch, and I think a 4 to 5 inch. Or it might even be a 5 to 6 inch. Let me find them for you. Here's one of the tanks. So we have a lot of these in stock. So if they're currently sold out, they'll be put back in stock shortly. So these guys are just great fish. They're just showstoppers. They're always colored up. They're really easy to keep, and they're not shy. So I mean, they're always out. Daniel, we did get some crypt flamingos from the nursery. Wasn't super impressed with them, so I didn't put them up. I will show them to you. Actually, they're looking a lot better today. They perked up a lot. I was afraid that they were gonna melt. So, yeah, we got in some. I'll probably put these up. I didn't put these up right away when we got them because they looked really kind of like they were gonna melt, and I was nervous about that, but they're looking really good. So does anyone have any breeding fish questions? I would really like to kind of answer some of those questions. I would highly recommend, if you guys have never had a species only tank and tried to breed fish at your house, that you do it. It's really rewarding. It's a way that you can kind of pay for your hobby. So if you have a local fish store you can maybe sell them to or turn them in for credit. We purchase fish ourselves from local breeders, local hobbyists. As long as the quality is good and the lines are pure, we'll buy fish from local breeders too. So it's a nice way to kind of subsidize your hobby, kind of help pay for the expenses of the hobby. Terry is asking, what is the easiest fish to start out with breeding? Now that's going to depend on your water and your comfort level, but just for a generic answer, the easiest is probably going to be any type of African cichlid, probably something like a Mabuna. And then you also have your live bears. So you have your swordtails, your mollies, your platies. These guys are all gonna give live birth. They're all relatively easy. Now, some people in different parts of the country do have issues with breeding live bears, and that's because of their water source. Live bears tend to like water with a good amount of salt in it and just minerals in general, so they do like a little bit of hardness. If your water's really soft, you might have some issues keeping or breeding some of these live bears. But a lot of them, they've been in the hobby so long, they've been line bred for so long that they do great in tap water across the country. So if you have tap water or well water, these guys will most likely do great for you. Let's see what else we got. Alright, so you're asking about Daniel's asking, no, Kevin's asking about the redfin caudo punctatus and breeding them. Really, you're just going to see them kind of pair off on their own, and they're going to section off part of the tank to themselves. So here's our selling tank. We breed these here in house, and what I've really noticed is this fish gets really aggressive. For a little fish, these guys will just run everybody out of that tank, to the point where we'll have one pair per 40-gallon tank when we're spawning them. And if we try to put a second pair, that other pair is either hanging up here in the corner hiding, or they're jumping out of the tank. So really, one pair per 40. You could probably do them in a smaller tank. You could probably breed them in a 20, but they get very aggressive. We tend to give them little like cichlid hut, like that type of cave, like a little bit of a cave or a fake rock cave, and they like to spawn in there. They'll spawn inside of PVC tubes. So if you give them like a PVC tube, you can cap one end, or you could just leave it how it is. Maybe like nice little 6-inch section, and they should spawn in there. Yes, Stacy, some of the Africans, they can be more difficult than the others due to aggression. And the females, even if the ratio is really good, sometimes those females just get really beat up. All right, let me see. What other questions do you guys have? So Daniel's saying he has some females separated from males for a while. They keep giving birth batch after batch. Yeah, guppies can be like that. They will not slow down. Ed's asking, do you use a piece of slate for breeding angelfish? Yes, we do. So we have long pieces of slate or tile. They're about this wide, so about 3 inches wide, and we will just put them at like a 45-degree angle in our breeding tanks on one corner or one side, and they'll spawn on there. And then after they spawn, we will actually take the piece of slate from their tank, and that's going to do two things for us. That's going to allow us to ensure that we get the highest survival rate out of those fry, or out of those eggs that hatch. And that's also going to allow the parents to recuperate faster, and that's going to allow us to breed them sooner. So it's actually a double win by pulling the fry or the eggs from the parents of the angelfish, where you're going to be able to get more spawning out of them, and the fish are going to be happier and healthier. Because what I've noticed, so a couple things I've noticed with breeding fish, if you leave the fry with the parents, now this is something I've noticed, I don't hear many people talking about this, but in my experience here, I've bred over 200 different species of fish, and what I've noticed is when the fish spawn, now rainbow fish are going to be an exception, but when we're talking about fish that take care of their fry, such as rams, angelfish, severums, any type of African cichlid. So we'll go look at a fish that this is going to apply to. Let's go look at some angelfish since we were just talking about them. Alright, so we breed these veil-tail angels here, so we're going to talk about this. Now, if you're breeding angelfish and you leave the fry with them, if you're trying to breed for profit and you want the maximum amount of fish out of them and the max return, I would highly recommend pulling the fry, and here's why. Now, say these two fish pair up and they spawn, and you have them in their own tank and they're raising their fry, that's great, but in general, one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to raise their fry, and what they're going to do is when you feed the fish, now this is what I've noticed, and this is what I was going to say I don't see a lot of people talking about, is the parents are actually not going to eat all the food that you put in that tank. I've noticed them, say I put a pelleted food in here, the parents are going to kind of chew that food up and spit it out, or they might just let the food sit on the bottom of the tank and they're not going to eat it. And that's because they're trying to allow their fry to get some food and give them the best chance at surviving. And then the second thing is, the other potential problem you're going to have is maybe those fish want to spawn again. Well, if they want to spawn again, they're either going to spawn again and kind of just forget about their fry, or they're going to eat their fry and try to spawn again. So you're kind of running into an issue there. So I would always highly recommend to pull the fry or the eggs as soon as possible. That way it gives your parents time to recuperate. It gives the fry more space and a better chance of them surviving and growing quicker. Yeah, Jermaine, I've seen that a lot, but I don't see a lot of people talking about that, and I think that's a really interesting point. I see that in all kinds of South American fish. I see that in all kinds of dwarf cichlids, African cichlids. It's just really interesting, and it's a really cool thing to observe. But if you're doing it for profit or maximizing the amount of fry you get, it's really not going to be that beneficial to continue to leave the fry with the parents. Tattoo Mike is asking if tetras spawn in community tanks. They will, but generally those eggs or the fry will be eaten, and you're probably never, very rarely are you going to see fry survive. Now, I've seen with Danios, if you just have an all Danio tank, I see fry survive all the time, but with tetras it's a little bit more touchy, and it's not as common to see those fry survive. Usually the eggs just end up being eaten, whether it's by the parents or other fish in that tank. Adam, that is another very important point that I did not touch, and that is nutrition. Nutrition plays a huge part when it comes to breeding fish. You want to make sure that that fish is getting the right type of food for that species. And a lot of times, so if we're talking about Central South Americans, a lot of times we're talking about high protein foods, and that's going to get them to spawn more. If you're talking about certain African cichlids like haps that are more predatory, a high protein diet for them is going to be important. And if you're talking about mabunas, I mean, you don't want to be packing them full of like a meaty type protein, because that's just going to bloat them up and they're not going to feel as good to spawn. Susan, yeah, so I have it written down. It's over 200. Not something I ever really talk about. To me, it's just part of the job working here. A lot of it's apisto types, rainbow types, angelfish, severums. There are some African cichlids in there, but they don't interest me, and they've never been like my responsibility here, so I don't really count those as much. But a lot of it, from betas to live bears to different types of shrimp, guppies, those are part of it, but I don't really count those. I kind of lump the guppies and all the live bears kind of into one. Plecos. I mean, we breed a lot of fish here, and I've been a pretty big part of that. Now I no longer breed fish here. I'm just kind of into the sales and operations part of it. But I still have the knowledge, and I would like to give you guys, pass along some of that knowledge to you guys and kind of show you how we do things and talk about that. Derek, I do see a comment from you. If you asked the question, I'm sorry. I see purple tropheus. I'm not familiar with the species, so the answer to that is definitely no, but I'm not too sure. I'm not familiar with the purple tropheus. Kyle, I don't have any experience with the dwarf red-tailed eels, so I couldn't give you any advice other than your water. So that's going to be the hardness. I'm not too sure where they come from, so I'd be checking the water hardness, checking the diet of the fish. Live foods are always great. So a dwarf, I'm not sure how big they are, but I assume they have a small mouth. So something like Daphnia, Moena, mosquito larva, That's going to get the fish into spawning mode. Any live food generally. And typically I don't recommend live feeders as far as fish, but small little bugs, insects, highly recommend those. Daniel's asking about his platinum white neon tetras going with his cardinal tetras. Yeah, there shouldn't be any issue. They might be saying that due to like neon tetra disease, and that's something we don't see here very often, but I have heard about neon tetra disease, so the forums and people saying that might be referring to that. So Bill, if you're getting excited about your bristlenose, I recommend a cave. Homemade caves like this work amazing. They allow you the fish to spawn in there. You can make them any size you want. The lids, we don't have them glued on, so when it comes time to collect fry, you can easily just take the lid off and put the fry where you want. Now, these caves are great too. These are some caves that are handcrafted, handmade. But the issue is when it comes time to getting fish out of these caves, such as fry, it's really difficult. They're going to wedge themselves in there and hold on. I've actually seen fish, they'll just stay in there. I've seen them stay in there for 20 minutes out of the water, and they survive, they're fine. But they will do everything they can to stay in that cave, including fry. So I recommend a nice homemade cave where you can easily take the lid off. Yeah, Daniel, that hong soy was looking really good. The problem is we only have males, and not many people want just males. A lot of people want pairs or trios. So yeah, guys, let's look at some comments. I'm going to need your guys' help and participation. There's been a lot of comments today. I lost my sheet of paper, but I do still have the number. So let me write it down before I start looking at comments, because I have no idea what everyone wrote. It was on my note page. So I'm writing it down right now. Now, guys, I have not looked at any number comments, so this is 100% random. I thought about this number before I even started the live stream, so today's number is 132. So whoever is closest or got that number. So guys, go ahead and help me out here. I'm going to be scrolling, so just let me know. We are going to get a better way of doing these giveaways. Scrolling comments in the middle of it's not necessarily ideal. So 132 is the number. And I'm scrolling, so stay tuned. I will talk about some other things right after I find the number. Or the closest number, okay. So far I found 133, Chris Linscomb. So far, Chris, you are the closest. You've just been replaced. Matthew DiNardo, you are now currently the closest. You did not go over. So we're going with the closest number that did not go over. So right now, Matthew DiNardo, you're looking at being the closest one. Still scrolling, guys. 122. Oh, so close. 132. Adam Hudson, right now you are currently you are on the money with 132. I got to see if anybody said that before you. And so Adam Hudson, go ahead and email us. We're going to get you that $25 gift card. That's pretty exciting. You nailed it. Last week, I don't think we had anybody with the exact number, so congratulations, Adam. Email us, and we'll get you that $25 card. So before I go, guys, let me know if you have any last-minute questions when it comes to breeding fish. I'd like to try to help you guys out, answer some questions.